A word of warning, this podcast explores graphic and disturbing stories and includes some strong language. It therefore may not be suitable for our young listeners or other folks who may find it disturbing. Hello and welcome to a special edition of True Crime News, the podcast, covering high-profile and under-the-radar cases from across the country every week. I'm your host, Anna Garcia. Our case this week: horror in the heartland as a couple is attacked at a rest stop while traveling in their RV. The husband and wife were enjoying the twilight years of their retirement with a shared goal of traveling more. They had packed up their RV and they were setting out from their home in Missouri to visit their son in the Pacific Northwest. Tragically, they wouldn't make it. The two were attacked at a rest stop. The husband was killed and the wife was severely injured. It's a case that has shocked the RV community, which is huge. It's estimated that 11 million households in the U.S. own an RV. That's why joining us later will be Sean and Kristy Michael, devoted outdoor and RV enthusiasts with a huge following on YouTube, and helping us to understand this case and the safety issues faced by millions of travelers is Louis Bolaños, a former homicide detective with more than 30 years of law enforcement experience and the founder of Get Bit Investigations. Also a tireless advocate for survivors and a dear friend of the show and a friend of mine. Louis, welcome back. It is so good to see you.
Hi, Anna. Always good to see you. Happy to be here. And yet, here we go. Another one that's really close to the heart.
Oh, I'm so sorry. It's especially tragic. Any life that we lose obviously is very, very tragic. It's tragic when someone is young and has the rest of their life ahead of them, but it's also very tragic when someone, is in their later years and truly vibrant and has a big family that they have started, and to have this happen to them in such a violent manner in public is just frightening.
Yeah, I want to just add on. You talked about 11 million Americans in this country own RVs. That's a staggering number, but even more staggering because I did some more research on this. There are, what U.S. Census Bureau has, the U.S. population of just over 330 million. There's, out of that 330, there are 67 million Americans who are planning on going RVing this next year. 67 million planning, whether they own or plan to own, borrow, rent, or some form of RV. That's a staggering number. That's just incredible. And as you know, but I haven't shared with the program, is that I spent 14 months in the last 2 years with my wife traveling across our beautiful country in our travel trailer. And we covered over 22,000 miles. So when I hear cases like this one, it really resonates because I can relate and put myself there like many other RVers can. What would you do in that situation? What could you do to avoid it or minimize your exposure to some type of criminal activity out there? It's just so many possibilities, but it does happen. I learned so much on this trip. And that's why I'm so happy to have Sean and Kristy here, because they have been doing this longer than anybody I know on YouTube. And I have been going to their classes. I call it YouTube University. They are phenomenal at educating the public, the RV community, the right way to do things, the wrong way to do things, things they've done, they've learned the hard way, and they're always putting the good and the bad out there. But in what they put out there to educate the public, there's a lot of safety in that. So I can't think of anybody better to have on the program to address what they've learned on their long, long honeymoon. I'll let them explain that to you over the years. But I think their work and what they do with the public and educating the public is second to none to what's out there.
I have to admit that when you and your wife set out on this adventure across America, I was very excited for you, in a positive, kind way, envious, living vicariously. But I have to tell you, Louis, I was really worried, and I shared my concerns with you often, because what people may not realize is over the last 2 years, and you were, a frequent contributor to the podcast, you were all over the country half the time, running down a hillside trying to get Wi-Fi. But I was worried about some of the places you were.
Yeah. There were some, and Sean and Kristy will address that. But yes, some were very welcoming just in appearance. And then some were not, where we would just arrive and decide the little hair sticks up, we're going to continue our drive through. Let's move on. And sometimes we landed and discover that after we landed, and you have to deal with it, protect yourself somehow. But yeah, it was quite the eye-opening experience, and I recommend it to everybody. Right? It can be done safely, but yeah, I would do it again.
Yeah. So the case that we're going to talk about, and then we're going to bring Sean and Kristy on. This is about a couple. They had been stabbed and attacked at a Nebraska rest stop while traveling in an RV. It happened in Grand Island, Nebraska. The victims, a married couple in their 70s, finally enjoying the fruits of that hard-earned money over all those decades. 72-year-old Gary Weaver was killed, and his wife Mary, who was 71, was severely injured. The accused here, the accused killer, who is in custody, 22 years old. When you talk about different lives and ages here, 22 years old, James Thompson Jr., who apparently wanted the vehicle that they were towing with their RV. And the couple, right, they were on their way to Portland, Oregon, married 46 years with 2 children, a grandchild, and they were going up there to visit family.
Yeah,
and never made it.
A son who was in a band who had a concert coming up, and we played bass, and they were excited about seeing that happen. Their focus is on just family time and enjoying their senior years, as you mentioned. So it could have happened to anybody, but unfortunately, our crazy crown murderer suspect here saw somebody that he thought he could take advantage of.
They're still discussing his competency to continue with the case.
Yeah, you knew that was coming, right? Absolutely, right? It's just that defense is always going to be there. But
I have to say, look, the way he acted in such a public manner, knowing that there was also a truck driver. I know you're going to get into the details here, but there was a truck driver who was not only watching him but recording everything with his dash cam. So this happened quite recently. This happened on June 19th of 2024. The two were viciously attacked, police say, by James, who demanded the keys to their Jeep. And then I guess, Louis, he starts stabbing each of them at different times.
And this is a rest area, right? Everybody, if you're on the freeway, you're driving by a rest area within a couple hours. You always are. And I've learned in my travels that the type of rest areas across this country vary, right? Some are very welcoming, some are not, but all have these issues.
Yeah. It's just so sad. Police arrive at the rest stop at 7:08 a.m. Again, this happened very early in the morning. Mary's on the ground by the RV. She's still bleeding, but she's hanging on. She's rushed to the hospital. She survives. Gary, not as fortunate. Authorities discovered his body in the RV. He suffered extensive wounds to his head, chest in this attack. He was taken to the hospital, but there was nothing that could be done. Now, the Jeep that we were talking about, the one that police say the killer was trying to get, the accused killer, had been detached from the RV, and there were blood stains on the inside, and the suspect, James Thompson, had already taken off. But it didn't take cops long to figure out where he is on the highway, and he's driving a Ford Focus. They spot him near Wood River, Nebraska, which is about 18 miles from the scene of the crime. When he sees the cops, he guns it. 120-mile-an-hour chase.
Thank goodness he didn't kill anybody else or hurt somebody else, but he ends up going off-road a bit, ending up in some water, right, in the river. Mm-hmm. And police catch up to him there. But they found the knife on him. Right. He was all bloodied. The police made a comment that when they found him, they found that his hands had offensive wounds on them. And I just want to be clear for our subscribers here, but that means there are offensive and defensive wounds. The offensive wounds come from an attacker. So if you have a bloody knife, a knife that's not bloody, but in your stabbing motion, the more you stab, that knife will become saturated with blood. And what happens to your hand, you keep with violent motion, striking up and down, you'll slide down the blade of the knife. So you end up cutting yourself and trying to get the handle, right? So that's on the inside. defensive wounds, if you're being attacked, you're doing this, and you're getting slashed on your forearms, right? Those type of things.
So he's charged with multiple felonies, including first-degree murder, attempted first-degree murder, 5 counts of using a deadly weapon to commit a felony, and 1 count each of a first-degree assault, attempted robbery, and operating a vehicle to avoid a felony. Just unbelievable. So he's sitting in jail. He's going to be sitting in jail for a long time.
Yeah, let's hope.
Yes. So, this was a lovely couple. They had still plenty of good years. We're going to bring on Sean and Kristy in a minute to discuss if there was anything that could have been done to prevent this. And sometimes in cases like this, especially when it's so public and there's such a public attack that's so vicious, I wonder if there's anything that could have been done differently to stop him.
Yeah, I think everybody does. And that's always the number one question. But the bottom line is the only way they could have prevented it is not leave on their vacation. Do not follow the passion that you pursued your entire life that brings you joy and comfort and just makes you happy as a couple. They were doing something right. They were married for so many years. But it could happen to anybody. And even if they were following, doing everything perfect, not being paranoid, but just doing the regular things, keeping your head on a swivel, being aware of your surroundings, trying to minimize your exposure, this stuff can still happen. That guy was on a mission, right? And if his mission was just to stab somebody, there's no way. I mean, you can't, he waited for an opportunity, and all of us will expose ourselves to something like that. If someone wants you, they're going to get you. It's almost impossible to prevent it. So I don't think there's a way they could have prevented it other than not going. But there are many things you can do to minimize your exposure, to try to put yourself in a surrounding that's a little more friendly. Rest stops can be a tough area at times. But you got to stop there. So sometimes you have to stop, right? So you want to do it as safe as possible. But I think Sean and Kristy are going to be able to address that quite well.
So joining us now is Sean and Kristy Michael, experts and enthusiasts in this area of traveling the country in an RV. It's such a pleasure to have you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for having us.
It's a difficult conversation because, what you all talk about is the joy and the how-to and everything that is really positive and forward-looking, where the case that we're describing today is a horrific crime. It truly is a crime that could have happened anywhere, but it happened at a very specific location to an older couple, which I do believe that this young man, who is accused, innocent until proven guilty, but 22 years old, he didn't go after the trucker, right? He went after someone much more vulnerable, a couple in their 70s.
Yeah, very true.
Well, we've been traveling with our RV rig for almost 2 decades now. And so we've been all throughout the lower 48 states. We've taken the Alaska Highway up to Alaska and back. We've stopped with our RV overnight in many different situations, urban situations, rural situations where sometimes there's no cellular coverage. And so we feel like we've experienced the gamut. As was previously stated, rest areas can be dangerous spots to stop because of their proximity to interstates. It's easy to make a quick getaway at 120 miles an hour after committing a crime at a rest area. And because by their very nature, the people there are passing through, you have to really be on high alert when you find yourself in those type of situations. What's crazy about this case is it happened at 7 a.m.
Yeah. And I think most people are more scared late at night and probably aren't as on guard in the morning time as they would be at 10 p.m. at night,
Yeah, good point. Yes.
Over the course of our travels, we can only think of a handful of times when we have ever truly felt physically threatened in any way.
Yeah.
And certainly one situation, it did happen after dark in a public parking lot. And it was a situation where a person was clearly having some sort of mental episode. And, one bit of advice we give to people up front, your best safety tools in the RV are the wheels. You can use the wheels to move physically to a different location. And in this case that happened to us, for example, we felt there was a danger where we were. It was 10:30 or 11 o'clock at night. I was not excited about driving down the highway to the next location, but that's what we did, because I think your best strategy up front is to avoid conflict, avoid those kind of confrontations.
Yeah, trust your gut, you know. Sure.
I am such a big believer in that, Kristy. I really do. I think early on in my life, I tried to fight the gut, trying to be that's fine. I don't know why I'm having these emotions and reactions. But when someone explained to me that a gut reaction is your body and your brain processing information faster than you yourself can process it, and giving you a physical reaction that is giving you like this primal warning, you need to listen to it.
Absolutely. And this is something I've said on our channel before. I think women are sort of more in tune to their gut reaction, because you sort of learn at a younger age that you have to look over your shoulder. You have to be aware of your surroundings, that sort of thing. Whereas I think men typically aren't as targeted as women are, so they don't really get taught that lesson at a young age. So I always tell the females in our audience to relay their gut reaction to their spouse or their travel partner, whoever they're with, because you know it's you're getting that response for a reason, and trust it. And worst case scenario, you move to a spot and things go fine, and you know it is what it is. But if you don't listen to that gut reaction, sometimes it can end.
Yeah, that's a good point. We always talk about listening to that sixth sense goes off in the back of your head here. Listen to it and act on it. Because the big thing is it's okay to be wrong.
Absolutely.
You might be wrong. I promise you, most of the time, you're probably going to be right. Right. Mm-hmm. So if
the thing about RV travel, you know, it's kind of like the Great American Road Trip, but on steroids. You know, you're getting out there and you're traveling with not a traditional vehicle in terms of, it's not a car. And a lot of times when people first get into an RV, they're treating it like a car, but they soon realize you have to stop at rest areas sometimes. You have to stop at truck stops because of the size of the rig. You can't park it everywhere. Right. And so they may find themselves, by definition, in areas with which they're not familiar. And so, again, we really preach practicing that situational awareness. And also, if you're traveling with a spouse or partner, to have a plan, like communicate beforehand about how you're going to react if you encounter an uncomfortable scenario.
Right. And for a situation like a parking lot late at night or a rest area, our practice between us is before you get out of your rig, check outside, look out your windows, see who's around, so you know what to expect when you step out that door, right? If you see somebody nearby that looks sketchy, keep that door locked and don't get out, you know? And if you've got a phone or something that has service and you can call for help, if you think this person is going to be a problem, do so, you know? The other thing is when we step out, like if we're in a parking lot and I'm going to go into a store or something like that, and Sean's not going in, he watches me walk all the way until I get inside that door. And same thing, if I'm coming out, I will call him and say I'm about to walk out the door, and he stands outside and watches me walk back to the camper. So, you know, just situations like that where you're in those parking lots or rest areas, you know, that are sometimes sketchy, you know, it's having a lookout is not a bad thing.
Yeah. You know, we had on the podcast a little while ago a former FBI agent who was the assistant in counterterrorism, but has been specializing in serial killers, you know, that gravitate to the highways, and how so many times all these different agencies in different states don't connect the dots that you have a serial killer on the move, and how you're more vulnerable on the highways. And one of the things that he said, which is so resonating with me and what you're saying, is this danger of rest stops. I got to tell you, before his conversation and your conversation, while it's not a favorite of mine, I never necessarily thought that a rest stop was going to be a truly dangerous place.
Right.
But I
Yeah.
guess I'm thinking of more populated ones, you know, the ones that are really busy and you're waiting to get the spot and there's a line out the ladies' room, but that's not what we're talking about.
Right.
Well, as Lewis mentioned, some can be very nice, beautiful places where you want to have a picnic, lunch, and others you want to spend as little time as possible.
Right. You
and
want
just
to
move
be
on.
super quick.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can I ask? Because at rest stops and truck stops, everybody thinks about those spots as being the darkest places. But in our experience, and I want to see if this resonates with you too, but even when we would arrive at a campground where you make a reservation or it's a last minute type thing, you get there, you settle in, and my wife and I would sit there and look out the window. We notice the majority of these campgrounds, the minute people pull in there and they have families, kids with them, they let their kids go. Ride the bikes, you're enclosed, it's safe. They have this pool down here.
Right.
And these kids, just for some bizarre reason, people drop their safety nets, so they normally wouldn't allow any place else. But in the RV park, I would see kids running unsupervised, doing loops around the bikes nonstop with some sketchy characters around there. And Anna, you know how much I like to do this, and I would really apply it to RV parks when we knew we were going to be there. I always check the local Megan's Law, right? A high percentage of some of these parks had more registered offenders that you could imagine there that live there, the ones that allowed living on there, right?
Yeah.
Full time. So you got to be careful with that. You just don't drop your guard because you're at an RV park, a beautiful one. One has a pool and they got kids activities. You always got to, not paranoid, but just be careful. Don't drop your guard.
No, I completely agree with you. And we have rolled into some of those campgrounds before where you look around and you think, okay, I think we're going to stay our one night and move on, you know? I think one thing that you can do to help in that regard is to read online reviews for campgrounds. There are some really good resources out there where you get really detailed information from people, and they will tell you, you know, this park is predominantly full-time, you know, people that, you know, are not just traveling through, they live there, and they can sort of tell you, is this an upscale resort? Or is it somewhere that's super sketchy and, you know, you're worried for your safety when you pull in? And, you know, avoid those places at all costs. And we have actually had a couple of instances where we have had mechanical failures on our RV or on our truck, and we've been stuck in some of those kind of places. And it can be scary. And you really do have to look over your shoulder and be very mindful of who you interact with and things that you say to people when you're interacting with them. Like, don't give away too much personal information. You know, again, it's better safe to be than to be sorry.
Yeah, we do encourage people to do some homework beforehand and try and research where they might end up staying. Now, with RV travel, that's not always possible, at least the way we do it, because we do tend to move around quite a lot. But you can generally get some advanced knowledge of what kind of campground you're getting into. Campgrounds are kind of like hotels. So, you know, some can be 5-star and very nice resort type areas, and others can be, you know, very sketchy.
And not the motel that you envisioned when you booked it, right?
Exactly.
You're like, where am I? You know, even when I used to travel for Crime Watch Daily, I mean, it didn't happen very often. It may have happened once or twice. I remember arriving one place, I got my suitcase, walked in, looked, turned around and said, no, thank you. I did not have a place to stay that night. And I was on the phone with our travel people. I said, I don't care. I will sleep in my car. I am not staying there. And they're like, what is it? I'm just, I got a feeling about it. And here you are, you know, as a professional, as a business person, trying to explain to your travel department, I have a feeling.
Yeah. I mean, your personal safety. And, you know, I don't think you should have to justify that in any way. If you've got a bad feeling about things, if you look around and you don't feel safe, then just get out. You know?
Yeah, and they were great about it.
It's really important to communicate with your fellow campers and with your spouse or partner, your family, whoever you're traveling with, because the thing about RV travel, yes, sometimes you're going to be stopping in these crowded urban areas and rest areas, but other times you might be off the grid. You might be 50 miles away from the nearest town. And for us, those are actually some of the most beautiful, special places to camp. We've stayed in many places in North America where there is no cellular service.
Yeah, or where we're the only people, that we can see. And those areas, like he said, are beautiful. But again, you do have to have your guard up because you can be a target when you're the only person there.
Yeah, there's literally no one to call because you can't make a phone call. There's no local person to come help you if you have a problem. So that's why it's important to think through different scenarios beforehand and already have sort of an action plan mapped out.
Right.
And these days, technology's come a long way too, and that we do have satellite internet now that we travel with. And that has helped tremendously when we're staying in those very remote areas. Over the years, we've been doing this a long time. I can think of a handful of situations like what recently happened in Nebraska where people have been attacked. And as I believe was mentioned earlier, sometimes you may just encounter evil out there on the road.
Yeah.
I don't think people should be fearful because, things can happen anywhere. They could happen in your own neighborhood. They could happen in your house. You could trip and fall walking out to your driveway, but you just need to be prepared. Think through the scenarios. We're not fearful after doing this all these years. I'm not fearful or afraid about going pretty much anywhere in North America. You just have to be smart about it.
That's a good point because you're describing boondocking.
Yes.
Yes.
If you're out in the middle of nowhere, usually what I like to worry about is the animals. We've had our share of lions and tigers and bears come visit us while we're boondocking. And that's been a pleasure, but you can plan for that. You could do it wrong also, but I think it's like anything else. If you plan for it ahead of time, you can minimize your exposure and know what you're going to do if that happens.
For sure.
Yeah, it's
yeah.
beautiful.
In fact, we were
It's so
talking
nice
about
to be
it
out there by
earlier.
yourself. Sorry, go ahead.
Being a victim of violent crime when you're RV traveling is kind of like being attacked by a grizzly bear. It may happen once a year in North America, but it's pretty rare and you can take steps to prepare against it. I mean, you're still going to go hiking, just carry your bear spray. Same thing. You're still going to go RV traveling, just do it smartly and maybe, have a plan and carry some means of self-defense.
Yeah.
So I have a question then. If it's a rarity, what happened to the Weavers, that doesn't happen that often, are you in the RV community perhaps a greater target for maybe lesser crimes like break-ins and thefts and that kind of stuff, or is that less of a concern?
Again, I think it goes to where you're camping, where you're spending your time. I mean, in the 17 years we've been doing this, we've only had one thing stolen, knock on wood. And we were camping on in a campground that is right off the Las Vegas Strip. So pretty harsh conditions for camping. And, it was just some person, homeless person, whatever, walked through our campground and just rode off on my bike. It was the middle of the day, and so I didn't have it locked down because I'd just ridden it around the campground. And, I think they were just waiting for the perfect opportunity. So that's another thing. Don't drop your guard, even though it's the middle of the day.
And even though you're in a campground,
even though you're in a
that situation,
campground, I mean, it was an expensive campground,
Yeah. It was run by one of the casinos there.
Yeah. And so, again, lock everything down. I think your chance of having any sort of theft or crime committed when you're camping in national parks, national forests, I think it's pretty rare. Most of the people camping there are other camping enthusiasts that are there for the same reason you are. It's more when you're in like a city environment. That's when you tend to sort of be in areas where you might be a target for theft. And again, it's important to keep everything locked down. Don't leave your nice $300 Yeti cooler just sitting outside. That's easy for somebody to just walk by and take with them. Same thing with your bikes. Lock them down. Don't leave anything out that you would be really sad to be parted with. Because those are easy targets. But again, when we're in national parks and places like that, I think the odds are super.
Yeah, we do advise that people just sort of maintain a low profile, and like, for example, we travel with a travel trailer and we tow with a pickup truck. We have a tonneau cover just sort of to cover up, all those items that could be
our grill,
targets.
Things like that somebody might want to take away, just makes it harder for them to see it, harder for them to get to it.
But I find it very interesting how much stuff people leave outside of their RV trailer unsecured.
Yes.
And just like your home, right? You still have people every day. Most neighborhoods, every week have somebody cruising their neighborhood looking for an opportunity. And I think sometimes those opportunities are more common in some of these campgrounds within urban areas within the city. I know some right there in Southern California, right on the coast, some beautiful high-end places, right? Where it's almost a daily thing where people will come to the campground and grab something. They will find something of high value. And they warn, they hand you a brochure, welcome, and it says, watch out for theft. That's always comforting.
Right.
Right. But it's honest. Thank you. Right. But people still leave stuff out. And, So again, like anything else, you got to keep your head on a swivel, be aware, lock it up because they'll go to the next one that's not locked, right?
Especially for high dollar equipment. I mean, for example, we travel with a portable inverter generator, and as Kristy mentioned, electric bikes, anything of that nature, we will have secure or locked up.
Yeah.
And in general, I really think most campgrounds, they certainly in the past have been high trust areas. Mm-hmm. And often in the RV community, RVers are kind of looking out for other RVers, usually.
Right.
Yeah.
And, I think it also depends on, like you said, you're in a more urban environment where it's easy for people to sort of just drive through and canvass things. That's one thing about most national parks and, national forest campgrounds. There's usually one way in and one way out. And so it's hard for somebody to sort of, make a fast getaway if they're driving through, and they usually have to have reason to be there to get in the gate in the first place. So it makes those areas, less of a prime target just because it's harder to get to, harder to get away. But yeah, when you're in those urban environments where somebody can just walk by, willy-nilly and just grab what they want, then that's definitely some place to keep everything locked down and out of sight.
Something that crossed my mind from this particular case we're discussing today, but also there have been a couple of previous cases that have happened over the past 10 years, is don't let the person inside your RV. I mean, in this case, the guy got inside the RV. There was another just terrible case a little over a decade ago in which a retired couple was attacked and the attackers got inside their RV. I think you can typically, if you lock the door of your RV, it's not going to be easy for anybody to get in there or hurt you. You're at risk when you step outside, and you're probably at greatest risk if you let people inside. So I would be extremely cautious about letting anyone inside the RV.
Yeah.
Because once you're in there, it's very easy for things to happen, and people outside may not know what's going on.
Right.
You can't see it.
Yeah, good point. Good point. And you started to hit on the nail on the head. Your neighbors, right? The good side of it, you go talk to your neighbors. We found a lot of comfort in that. And you can get a good vibe of your neighbors in a short conversation. And you may end up, knowing how long they're going to be there or who's there in their group, will be gone for, I don't know how much information people feel comfortable sharing, but sometimes in that you get a second set of eyes watching your back. Twice on our trip, we had a family, an older couple, and then a young female come to us, and because we had just landed and set up, and say, hey, we're not comfortable with our neighbors. They're just a bad vibe. They're being a little aggressive with us. And they end up come eat with us. We invited them to come eat and had a great conversation. They felt safe, and that fear was gone. And, so I think neighbors can be a key factor here in helping you watch your surroundings in these places, because the bottom line is, it is really enjoyable. It's an incredibly fun thing to do. And it's just it's underestimated what you can see out there still to this day. If you want to hit the road and visit these places that you can see no other way.
Wow.
Absolutely.
This has been fascinating. I'm not an RV person. What a surprise.
You were virtually, Anna.
I was virtually. Well, I kept saying, are you sure your wife is in on this? And he's like, oh, yeah, because I built her a huge bathroom. And the minute Lewis said big bathroom, I'm like, really? Like, how big of a bathroom?
Some of these RVs are like little apartments on wheels,
Yeah, they're very comfortable. As Lewis mentioned, there are a lot of people who might RV for a short period of time. Like you might not be an avid, annual RV traveler, but you might decide to rent an RV and take it out for 2-week trip or a
Yes.
month.
See, I would
or
like
whatever.
to do that. Like that's something that I could say I haven't done yet. It's on my bucket list. I don't see myself investing, and moving my life this way, but I do see like, wow, that really does look like it would be quite an experience, and I would like to try that. So
Yeah, absolutely.
and
Well,
I know
that's the
that
thing. Beauty of the internet and videos these days is that you can get yourself up to speed with education, watch a lot of educational videos and kind of know what you're getting into beforehand. Because with RV travel, it's kind of a lifestyle in a lot of ways. And there's a bit of a learning curve. But, we've had people come to us and tell us that we saved them years of time because they can learn from our videos and quite often learn from our mistakes. We're very upfront with sharing the mistakes that we've made over the years.
There have been many.
Yeah, I've learned to view mistakes as great content. Like, So that helps take the sting out when I foul something up and we're traveling. But I think there are a lot of people out there who are probably thinking about getting into the RV lifestyle, even for that once in a lifetime bucket list type of trip. But that's why you need to watch videos like this and bring yourself up to speed and be prepared when you do that, because you'll get a lot more enjoyment out of your travels that way.
All right. Well, I would like to end this on a more optimistic note,
Right.
because that is, in honor of the Weavers, that they were on a trip, they were on a journey, and I'm sorry that it ended so horrifically for them, and I hope that there is justice for them. But clearly there was something about them and their spirit which was about adventure. So, Sean and Kristy, I realize if you're into RVs, everybody knows who you are, but where can people find your content, follow you, find your videos?
Our largest archive of video content is on YouTube. We have a channel called Long Honeymoon. The origins of the channel, we had just gotten married and we had just gotten our first RV, our travel trailer. So we honeymooned in our RV and started the channel really in the early days of YouTube for fun and to share videos of our travels with friends and family. And then over time, we realized that we could help a lot of people through this channel by educating them about the RV lifestyle. I mean, they could also check out our Facebook page, and we're on Instagram, and
All those handles
yeah,
are
all
Long Honeymoon.
Yeah.
And then we have our website, longhoneymoon.com. So
it's a lot of fun, a lot of educational information videos, and a lot of humor and entertainment. I
we
think
try to make it fun for people, the good and the bad. And we try to be upfront with people and, make everybody have realistic expectations about your RV trip, the amount of time it's going to take, that everything isn't going to be, sunset and rainbows and all that sort of thing. But it is going to be an adventure that will be incredible. You'll see places that you won't have the opportunity to see any other way. And you meet a lot of great people along the way. And it's definitely worth doing.
Actually, one high compliment that we receive often is there are a lot of people who don't have RVs who still watch our channel because they enjoy the videos. They enjoy kind of traveling vicariously, through the videos that we share. So it's kind of a fun channel to visit. It's not really stuffy, education content all the time. A lot of it's really fun and lighthearted. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And Louis, where can people follow you?
Thank you, Anna. My entire social media footprint can be found at getbitinvestigations.com. Sean and Kristy, thank you both so much. I'm a big fan, and please know that the work you're doing is laying in a very positive way with millions. You're making it much safer for people out there to travel and enjoy this country. And my wife and I are two of them. So thank you for the work you do.
Well, thank you, Louis.
Very much. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Anna, for having us. Thank you for your kind words. It's very humbling to us. Very encouraging. Makes me want to get out there and make another video.
I love that. That's so. I know this was, Louis came to us and said, I really want to cover this case. First of all, it's a horrific murder and it needs attention. And we do believe that there are a lot of cases that don't get the national attention that they deserve. And then he said, and I really feel strongly about having a conversation about safety. So we're like, Absolutely. Whatever Lewis wants to do. We've always got a
Right.
place here. So thank you all. You can find me at Anna G News. You can find us, and everything that we do at My True Crime News, the handle across all social media platforms. You can find this episode and all of our episodes of our podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have 5 million subscribers, and we'd love you to join us. And also, you can receive our newsletter at truecrimenews.com. So until next week, this is True Crime News, the podcast. I'm your host, Anna Garcia. And as we always say, don't do crime.